Maren Ellis is 54 years old, standing in a gravel lot at a county surplus auction on a grey Saturday morning, a paper auction number curling in her fist against the cold. She isn't here for anything in particular. She's here because her sister insisted, because 4 months of sleeping in a borrowed guest room had worn a groove into her that needed breaking. He doesn't know it yet, but in the next 90 seconds, she is going to raise her hand for rusted, gutted 1994 Bookmobile. No engine, flat tires, a county library seal barely visible under the rust, and the something in her life that has been quietly ended for 11 years is about to quietly begin again. To understand why a woman like Maren Ellis would bid $19 on a piece of scrap metal, you have to go back to how she was before this parking lot. She met Daniel Cole at 26 at a friend's engagement party, and what she remembered most is that he was the only person in the room who asked her a second question instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. He was a high school shop teacher then, patient, good with his hand, the kind of patient that made her trust him instantly. She would later understand that same patience has also useful for waiting quietly for the right moment. They married 2 years later. Maren worked her way up in a commercial insurance, the kind of career that ate her weekends and paid her back with a title, a decent salary, and almost no time to look closely at anything at home. When Ivy was born, Daniel left teaching. Daycare cost nearly what he earned, and someone needed to be present. Maren was released, grateful even. She used to tell people, half joking, I got the easy end of the deal. I just have to show up to work. He runs the whole house. She meant it as a compliment. She has no idea. Running the house would eventually mean running something else entirely somewhere she was never invited to look. Back in the gravel lot, Maren's hands goes up. $19. The auctioneer looks almost relieved someone finally took it. Her sister asks, not unkindly, what on earth she plans to do with the dead bus. Maren says, scrap value, and doesn't believe her own answer, even as it leaves her mouth. What she doesn't say, what she barely admits to herself standing there in the cold, is that for the first time in the months she had wanted something, not needed, wanted. It had been a long time since those two words felt like the same thing. 11 years before this lot, Maren's father died of a stroke and left behind a modest but real fortune. $400,000, the quiet result of a 30 years running a small manufacturing supply company most people never noticed. Maren cried for a month. She barely looked at the money. Daniel handles the estate paperwork, the meetings with the estate lawyer, the transfer of funds, because grief had turned a woman, usually so sharp with the numbers, into someone who flinched at spreadsheets. Let me take care of us, Daniel told her one night, holding her hand across their kitchen table while Ivy slipped upstairs. Let me be the one who makes this grow. You've given us so much already. Let me give something back. It sounded like love. It sounded, honestly, like the version of Daniel she'd married. Steady, careful, someone who thought in decades, not months. She signed what he asked to sign. For 11 years, that trust never once felt like a risk. That was the part that would haunt her later. Not that she'd been foolish, but that she did had no reason, not one single reason to think otherwise. Rewind further to the Tuesday morning that started all of this. Maren is running 50 minutes late for a client call, standing at the kitchen counter with a coffee going cold, opening the banking app only to pay the mortgage before she forgets. And the number on the screen doesn't match anything she expects. $612 in an account that should have held conservatively over 300,000. She assumes it's a glitch. She refreshes it twice. Then she calls the bank, and a woman with an unbearably calm voice explains structure withdrawal over 9 years. Our route did to something Carl did. Alice Grove Holdings. Maren doesn't say anything for almost 30 seconds, long enough that the woman on the phone asks if she is still there. 9 years, Maren finally repeats. Ivy had been 8 months old 9 years ago. Maren remembers signing a form at the kitchen table, Ivy on her hip, Daniel's hand steady over hers, guiding the pen. This just consolidate things while you are overwhelmed. I handle it. She had thanked him. She doesn't confront him that night. She makes dinner. When he comes back from the walk, he takes every evening at 6, a walk. She now understands. She has never once questioned in 11 years. After he falls asleep, she takes his laptop into the bathroom, locks the door, and begins reading everything. What she finds isn't a con in the way she did feared. No offshore accounts, no vanished millions. It was, in its own way, a real business. A memory, religion car wash chain, bought with her father's money, alongside a college friend named Rick Delaney. A man she met at exactly 3 holidays parties in a decade and never once discussed money with. The leases are real, the tax filing are real, the account holds $280,000. Grow quietly, competently, entirely without her. What's make it unbearable isn't the theft, it's the competence of it. Daniel hadn't gambled the money away or funneled it into an affair. He built something patient and real, brick by brick for 9 years in a room. She has never handed a key to using a door made entirely for her father's. She waits 3 days, mostly because she doesn't trust her own voice yet. On the Friday after Ivy was gone to bed, Maren sets his laptop on the coffee table, the Alice Grove account still open on the screen, and sits across from the man she's shared 11 years with. Tell me about Rick's car washes. Something moves across Daniel's face she's never seen there before. Not quite guilt, closer to relief, like a man finally to allow exhale after nearly a decade of holding his breath. I was going to tell you once it was stable. You were working 60-hour week. I didn't want to stress you with numbers. You spent my father's money for 9 years and called it protecting me. It's our money, Maren. Everything I built is for us, for Ivy. Then why is Rick's name on the LLC and not mine? He has no answer, not a real one, just silence. The same kind of silence she realizes that had been sitting at their kitchen table for 9 years without her ever noticing its shape. Maren doesn't burn anything down that night, though she wants to. Instead, she hires a forensic accountant, Priya Ose, whose voice sounds like it belongs in a closing argument. 3 weeks of digging surfaces, something worse than betrayal. Forged signatures onto refinancing documents used to free up additional capital when the business expanded in year 6. Not a marriage problem anymore, fraud. She doesn't go to the police first. She drives to one of Rick's on car washes on a quiet Sunday morning. The automated brushes running behind her like something out of a fever dream, and lays the forged documents on the hood of his truck. I own 40% of this, whether Daniel likes it or not. You can buy me out quietly or explain forged signature to a judge. Rick goes pale under the fluorescent lights faster than her own liar believed possible. This is the part of present timeline worth sitting in honestly. The divorce takes 4 months. The settlement takes longer. Maren doesn't take a piece of the business. She wants nothing left with Daniel's fingerprint on it. She takes a lump sum instead. $310,000, more than the original theft, adjusted for the 9 years of quiet growth she never got to watch happen. By the following spring, she is 54, divorced, living out her sister's guest room with 16-year-old Ivy, county quarters for the laundromat. A woman who once managed six-figure household budgets, now doing arithmetic on a holding card table with two suitcases beside it. This is where the bus comes back in. Not as a metaphor, as the only thing in that entire year that asked something of her instead of taking something from her. A week after the auction, Maren is on her knees inside the gutted Bookmobile, prying collapsed shelving away from the water-stained wall, when something slid free behind the wood. A swollen, water-damaged logbook, the ink inside barely legible. It belonged to a woman named Odell Marsh, a retired teacher who drove this exact bus through 3 rural counties for 19 years, not just lending books but tutoring kids for free in driveways and church lots because the nearest library sat 90 minutes away. The final entry, 8 years old, reads simply, "Run out of funding. Sorry kids, keep reading anyway." Maren sits in the dark of that bus for a long time. She isn't crying. She's thinking about something else entirely. How easily something built with years of quiet, patient work can be left to rot the moment nobody's watching anymore. Maren has no money, but she has 11 years of tracking someone else's finances. A skill she finally turns toward her own life for the first time. She trades bookkeeping services for a rebuilt engine. She takes the library withdrawn's book pile instead of buying new stock. Ivy, hesitant at the first, starts sending shelves after school. The first thing mother and daughter have built together since the divorce began. A retired contractor named Walt Sims, who learned to read from the model Marsh 30 years earlier, shows up one Saturday with a truck bed of lumber and asks for nothing in return. "She taught me to read when I was 11, he says. "I've been waiting 8 years for someone to finish what she started." The county nearly impounds the bus twice over registration issues before the Maren finds the right payment for a mobile non-profit library. Her part-time bookkeeping job cut her hours when she asks for Fridays off to run routes. Twice she sits in the driver's seat before dawn and asks herself honestly whether this is foolish. A woman with almost nothing, pouring what little she has into a stranger abandoned mission. The Ivy climbs in beside her a box of donated paper bags, and the question stops needing an answer. By the year 2, the route has name, Odell's Wheel, and a crew, Volt on repairs, a retired nurse named Corinne running Thursday tutoring, and a 12-year-old named Priya who comes every week and eventually simply never stops coming. Her own home, too unstable to return to most nights, Maren never asks too many questions. She just makes sure there's always a seat, a book, and someone who notices if Priya doesn't show. Ivy, who used to flinch at every raised voice, starts reading aloud to the younger kids without being asked. Maren watches her daughter's voice steady out that year, the same way the bus engine finally had. One patched part at a time. Daniel reaches out once, mid-air too, with a guilty wordless check. Maren sends it back, uncashed, not from a agree anymore. She's already built, with her own hands, everything she needs. 3 years after a $19 bid in a gravel lot, Odell's Wheels runs 4 rural routes staffed entirely by volunteers who had once been kids, now here else to learn. Maren still keeps Odell March water-stained logbook in the glove compartment, not because any more requires it, but because Someday, someone might need proof of how far a person can rebuild from almost nothing. She never got her father's money back. She stopped needing to call it that, what she has now. She built herself plank by plank, page by page, in full view, with her own name on every part of it. And no one will ever again take something from her simply because she wasn't looking.